The wind dragged dust like old ghosts across the broken fence posts of Holt Ranch, a place forgotten by time and mercy. Elias Holt hadn't spoken to a soul in months, not since the snows melted, and he'd made that final supply run to town. His days bled together under the weight of solitude and regret, the only voices being the creak of saddle leather and the groan of old timber under the wind. Then came the knock, or rather the sound of feet in dust. Real voices, human voices. The sun hung low, red and unforgiving when Elias looked up from his fence repair. On the main road, 3 women walked toward his land, trailing children like shadows. One girl stumbled and began to cry. Elias felt the old ache return. People meant trouble. People meant pasts, and his was a graveyard. He reached for the Winchester propped against the fence, not in threat but habit, and watched them come. The lead woman wore a faded bonnet, her dress once blue, now gray with travel. She walked like she had miles to go but no more strength to spend. The others flanked her. One carried a baby swaddled in threadbare cloth, the other held a young boy's hand. Their faces were painted in dust and desperation. When they drew close, the lead woman raised a tired hand. "Sir," she called, her voice dry from heat and fear. "We mean no trouble. We just need a moment of your time." Elias didn't move. 20 yards stood between them, close enough to see the little girl's tears, the silent plea in the women's eyes. The lead woman stepped forward. "My name's Abigail," she said. "This is Hannah and Lila. We've been walking since dawn. We need help." He felt it then, the tightness in his gut he hadn't allowed himself in years. Not since Mary and Rose. He'd built this life to keep such feelings out, and yet here they were again, dusty and barefoot, asking to be let in. "We just need a place to stay the night," Abigail added, softer now. "The children can't walk no more." 15 years of silence cracked when Elias stepped aside and opened the door to his home. The creak of its hinges sounded like a tomb unsealing. The children clung close as they stepped inside. Abigail looked back at him with wary hope. He nodded once. Inside the parlor was a mausoleum, dust motes in golden slants of light, the smell of cedar and old sorrow. The women didn't sit until he told them to. The boy, Hannah's son, watched Elias like a hawk watches the sky. Abigail settled her youngest on the bench while Hannah stood guard behind her son. Lila clutched her bundle like it held something more than clothes. Maybe it did. "You said you walked since dawn," Elias said, leaning on the doorframe, the only place that felt safe. "Where from?" "Borden House." 20 miles east," Abigail replied. "But it turned mean." "How mean?" Hannah spoke this time, her voice taut as a wire about to snap. "The man running it said we owed him more than money." Elias's jaw tightened. He knew men like that, snakes in boots. "We heard about your ranch," Lila whispered. "Said you were alone, but not cruel. Hope in the hopeless. A gamble on a ghost of a man." Elias swallowed hard. What do you think of Elias's choice to open his door like, and comment below to share your thoughts? The youngest girl wandered toward the hearth. "Fire's been out for weeks," he muttered. Abigail's voice came soft. "When'd you last cook a real meal? I eat fine." "I reckon you do, but you ain't had company in a while." Her words pricked him deeper than expected. The sound of laughter echoed like a memory he couldn't shake. He shoved it down. "Jacob," Hannah said, "wants to know if there's food." Elias nodded once. "I'll find something." But as he turned, Abigail's voice halted him. "There's more you need to know." That was the moment he realized this wasn't just shelter. This was a storm blowing in, dressed in dresses and quiet eyes. In the kitchen, Elias stirred beans over a low flame while the silence from the parlor settled around him like old dust. He hadn't lit that stove in weeks. The familiar smell clawed at his memory, bread baking, Rose laughing, Mary humming off-key. He ground his teeth until the memories quieted. Back in the parlor, the children had curled into their mother's arms. The boy Jacob still watched him with a stare too guarded for someone that young. Abigail met Elias's eyes as he returned with the food. "We ain't just running from a cruel landlord," she said. "We're running from something worse." He handed her a bowl, his knuckles tight around the tin. "Go on," the man Silas Hannah said, "offered us a deal room and board debts cleared in exchange for services. When we said no, he said he'd sell us instead, said he knew men who'd pay." Lila added he gave us until sunrise. The flames of the lamp flickered, catching the fury in Elias's eyes. He'd heard this story before, just with different names. He'd buried his wife and daughter because a doctor had refused to help because the law had called it acceptable. It was all the same rot. "You think he'll follow?" Abigail's voice cracked. "We know he will. We saw a rider trailing us. We hid, but he was asking around. He'll come." Elias exhaled slow. "Then he'll come here." Abigail studied his face. "The woman in town, the one who told us about you, said you'd lost family. Said you'd understand." That name scratched open the locked drawer in his chest. She had no right. "She was right," Abigail said softly. "You do understand." Silence stretched. Then the youngest girl wandered toward the shelf and picked up a small wooden horse, Rose's. She held it with reverence. "Can I play with this?" His throat closed. The room dimmed except for the light hitting her face, so achingly familiar. He nodded once, not trusting his voice. Outside, a horse's hoofbeats shattered the quiet. "Fast! Urgent!" Hannah moved to the window. "Someone's coming! Fast!" Elias stepped forward, eyes already scanning the horizon. He hadn't fought in 15 years, but his hands remembered, his rage remembered. He turned to the women. "Get the children to the back room," he said, "and stay quiet." The storm had found them. The porch groaned under Elias's boots as he stepped out into the dusk, rifle in hand. The horizon burned orange and the wind came hot from the east, carrying dust and something else. Horses. Fast. From the bend in the road, 2 riders emerged, shadows stretching long in the dying light. One was tall and lean, wearing a black duster that flared behind him like wings. The other was heavier, thick in the gut, with a tarnished star pinned to his chest like a scar that never healed. Sheriff Amos Reed. Elias felt a cold throb rise in his throat. That man had stood on this porch once before, 15 years ago, with soft lies and dry eyes, saying nothing could be done as he walked away from 2 fresh graves. The leaner man reined in first. His grin was wide wrong. "Evening," he called. "Name's Silas. I believe you've got something belongs to me." "I don't believe I do," Elias replied, his voice flat as dry stone. Silas nudged his horse forward. 3 women, couple kids. We tracked them straight up your trail. Hell prints are still fresh." They passed on. Elias lied, rifle steady across his chest. "Didn't stop." Reed's horse shifted. That a fact, the sheriff said, his voice carrying the slow smugness of a man who'd made a career from looking the other way. "Mind if we take a quick look around?" "I do mind," Elias said. "This is private land." Inside the house, a floorboard creaked, then a soft cry quickly hushed. Reed turned his head slightly at the sound. Silas smirked. "You sure about that? I'm sure you should turn around and ride out," Elias said. He didn't raise the rifle. He didn't need to. The steel in his tone did that for him. Silas dismounted slowly, fingers brushing the butt of his revolver. "Now, Holt," he said low. "I've got contracts, signatures, witnesses. These women owe me months of service." What you're doing here, it's interference. Harboring fugitives. Elias didn't blink. I call it sheltering folks. And I don't give a damn what papers you bought. Reed stayed mounted, scanning the yard like a man weighing ghosts. It don't have to go bad, he said. Just hand 'em over. That's when Jacob's voice cracked through the wall, small and terrified. Mama, is that the bad man? The words hung in the air like smoke after a shot. Silas's smile curdled. Well, that answers that. Inside, quick footsteps, a door opening. Abigail stepped out first, arms bare, spine straight as a pine beam. You want us? She said. You talk to us. Leave this man alone. No. Elias growled, stepping forward. Get back inside. But she didn't move, nor did Hannah, who came to stand beside her. Then Lila. 3 women facing down 2 armed men and a sheriff with a crooked badge. Silas's lip curled. Look at that, a little defiance. No, Abigail said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. A little dignity. You won't take our children. Not again. Reed's voice snapped. This ain't a court. You don't get speeches and you don't get to call evil legal. Elias snapped back. Silas took a step closer. You'd kill for them. I've killed for less. His finger hovered near the trigger. Abigail's hand brushed Elias's arm. Don't, she whispered. It's what they want. Lila's voice quiet as cotton. We can go. Just let the children stay. No, Elias said. That's not how this ends. The wind picked up, whistling between the boards. How would you stand up to injustice like Elias and the women did? Like and comment to join the conversation. From the ridge beyond the road, hoofbeats sounded. More riders. Everyone turned toward the sound. Silas grinned. Looks like company's coming, and this time the odds ain't in your favor. But Elias wasn't watching the road, he was watching the porch, watching 3 women who had every reason to run and instead chose to stand. And for the first time in 15 years, he knew what side of the line he belonged on. Dust swirled as the sound of hooves thundered over the ridge. 5 more riders crested the hills, silhouetted by the bleeding sun. Silas's grin stretched wide, sure of victory, but Elias didn't move. His eyes were fixed not on the newcomers, but on the wind-whipped forms standing beside him, Abigail, Hannah, and Lila. The lead rider dismounted, tall, silver-haired, with the calm assurance of a man who'd weathered storms and still stood upright. Caleb Turner. Elias recognized him from town, a rancher whose word meant something in a land where most men traded theirs cheap. Evening Sheriff Caleb said, cool and measured. Didn't expect to see the law this far west without a posse. Reed shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. Official business. These women are fugitives. Caleb raised a brow. Funny. They look like mothers to me. Silas stepped forward, eyes sharp. They violated contracts. They owe me months of service. Caleb's face darkened. Riverside boarding house, isn't it? The one where women vanish and no one asks questions. Reed's mouth tightened. That's slander. Caleb turned to Elias. These folks under your roof, Holt, they are. And do they want to leave with these men? Abigail stepped forward. We don't. We came to this ranch because we had nowhere else. We won't go back. Caleb gave a nod. Then this land stands with them. One of Caleb's men, dismounted, rifle resting on his shoulder. You got a legal claim, show it to a judge. Otherwise, ride on. Silas's face turned hard. I don't need a judge. I've got leverage. He drew faster than anyone expected and pointed his revolver at Jacob. The boy froze, wide-eyed. A scream ripped from Hannah. Abigail lunged forward. Stop! Elias roared, but it wasn't Elias who fired. A crack split the air like lightning and Silas's shoulder snapped back. He fell with a shout, pistol spinning across the dirt. Caleb stood firm, smoke trailing from the muzzle of his rifle. "Threatening a child," he muttered. "That crosses every damn line." Silas groaned on the ground, clutching his bleeding arm. Reed reached for his gun, but froze as 4 more rifles trained on him from Caleb's men. "Don't be stupid," Caleb warned. "This ain't your jurisdiction no more." Reed scowled, breathing heavy. "This isn't over." "No," Elias said, stepping down from the porch, rifle at his side. "It ends here. You're done looking the other way while bastards like this profit off the desperate." Silas growled through clenched teeth. "You'll pay for this." Elias didn't even flinch. "I already did. 15 years ago. Buried my daughter and wife because justice meant nothing to men like you." He turned to Reed. "Take him. Get off my land, and don't come back." Caleb stepped aside. "Best follow his advice, Sheriff." With bitter reluctance, Reed helped Silas onto his horse. The wounded man swore blood darkening his coat, but he didn't resist. With a final glare, they rode off into the falling dark. Silence held for a long moment. Then Abigail collapsed onto the steps, trembling. Hannah held her son tight, tears streaking his dust-caked face. Lila knelt beside them, wrapping her arms around both. Elias stood over them, watching. Then slowly, quietly, he stepped inside the house. The room was still. Only the smell of gunpowder lingered faint like thunder past. After a long while, Abigail joined him. "You okay?" she asked. He shook his head. "No, but I will be." She looked at the wooden horse still clutched in her daughter's hand. "You saved us." "No," Elias said. "You saved me first. I just didn't see it yet." Outside, Caleb tipped his hat and turned to go. His men followed without a word, leaving only the fading hoofbeats behind. In the porch light, the children began to laugh softly at first, then louder, chasing each other across the yard, and for the first time in 15 years. Elias Holt didn't feel like a ghost anymore. He felt like a man worth being again. The night settled over Holt Ranch like a blanket stitched from old fears and new chances. The echoes of gunfire had long since faded, replaced by the whisper of wind through dry grass and the quiet breath of children asleep behind sturdy walls. But Elias Holt didn't sleep. He sat alone on the porch, Winchester leaning beside him, eyes lost in the darkness beyond the fence. The land had changed not in appearance but in meaning. Once a refuge from pain, now a stand for something greater. Inside, Abigail moved softly through the dim parlor, her steps light, her shoulders still tense. She brought him coffee, the tin cup warm in his hands. "You should rest," she said. "I did for 15 years, Elias replied. "Didn't do me much good." She didn't argue. Instead, she sat beside him in the creaking chair once meant for Mary. They watched the stars a while, silence comfortable now. "You think they'll come back?" she asked. Elias shook his head. "Not them. Reed's pride is too big to risk another humiliation. And Silas won't lift a pistol for months. But men like them." He glanced out into the dark. "They never stop. They just change names." Abigail nodded. "Then we stay ready." By morning, word had already begun to spread. Caleb had done what he promised. He rode into town and told the story not just of Silas's threats, but of Reed's betrayal of justice. Told it loud, told it often. By noon, half the territory was buzzing. A circuit judge sent word Reed was to be suspended pending inquiry. Silas was confined to bed with his reputation bleeding out faster than his shoulder. People came. First a neighbor, then a preacher, then a woman with a black eye and a child who wouldn't speak. They all came to Holt Ranch drawn by a simple truth. It was no longer just a patch of land. It was a line in the dirt, a place where the hunted stood their ground. Elias didn't invite them. He didn't have to, but he didn't turn them away either. Hannah set up a corner of the kitchen to knead bread. Abigail taught the children in the mornings, chalkboard propped against a crate, laughter echoing down the halls. Lila dug a garden behind the barn, and the soil, untouched for years, welcomed her like an old friend. Jacob, once quiet as shadow, took to whittling under Elias's eye. Like Rose used to, he muttered one day without thinking. The boy didn't ask who Rose was. He just nodded and kept carving. 1 week later, the town's mayor arrived. He brought papers, official ones, declarations and land claims. With Reed gone and Silas discredited, the boarding house's assets had been seized. The mayor offered Elias a chance to buy it cheap, turn it into a safe place. A school, maybe. A haven. Elias looked at Abigail, then at the children playing tag near the fence. "Not me," he said, "but her. She's already started." The mayor tipped his hat to Abigail. "Then the title's yours, miss. All it takes is a signature." Her hand trembled just slightly as she wrote her name. That night, as the lamps burned soft in the windows and the smell of stew drifted from the hearth, Elias found himself in the barn brushing down his old gelding. Hannah came to the doorway, arms crossed. "You leavin'?" He shook his head. "Not yet. Just rememberin' about Mary and Rose always." She stepped closer. "You did right by them, you know. Today. Every day since you opened that door." He smiled, faint but real. "Feels like they're finally breathing again. Through this place. Through you all." She nodded. "And you?" Elias glanced toward the house. Laughter spilled out, bright alive. "Guess I'm breathing again too." The next morning he took down the faded wanted poster of Silas that had once been nailed to his pantry wall, one he kept to remind himself of all the evil the world wouldn't punish. He folded it slowly, then fed it to the fire. Justice had found its way to Holt Ranch. Not because the law brought it, but because one man chose to stand, and others stood beside him. And sometimes that's enough. Autumn crept in, quiet and golden. The wind softened, carrying the smell of dry hay and baking bread across the yard. Holt Ranch once. A place of ghosts began to hum with life. Elias stood on the porch with a mug of coffee, watching Jacob chase Abigail's daughter through the tall grass. Their laughter echoed against the hills, rising like songbirds over the morning stillness. He sipped slowly, letting the warmth settle deep. Behind him, the house no longer creaked from emptiness. The once dusty parlor now held voices and footsteps. Curtains had replaced blankets nailed over windows. New floorboards ran through the hall where gaps used to whisper cold into the bones. Abigail passed behind him, carrying a basket of laundry, humming something old and familiar. Hannah emerged next with a tray of biscuits. Lila followed, her hands smudged with soil, eyes bright from tending the garden behind the barn. Life had moved in and stayed. It had taken time. The wounds weren't just in the boards or walls, but in the people, too. Abigail flinched at loud knocks. Hannah watched every man's hand. Lila sometimes cried at night, thinking no one heard. But healing like weather changed slowly, and Elias, for the first time in years, let himself be part of that change. He fixed the chicken coop first, then the well, then the back roof where the rains used to come through. Jacob helped when he wasn't in lessons. Together they dug new fence posts, shared old stories, and carved small wooden toys they left on windowsills for the younger kids. "You've got the hands of a builder," Elias said one morning as Jacob shaped the head of a horse. "Think so?" the boy asked. "I know so." The boy grinned. "You ever build anything besides fences?" Elias paused, then looked toward the house. "I think I'm building one right now." The schoolhouse opened in town that month. Abigail rode in twice a week to teach more than just their children. Dozens came, some from miles out. She brought chalk books and the firmness of someone who'd earned her voice. The bakery followed. Hannah, whose biscuits made hardened ranchers cry, opened it in a corner of the general store. Folks came for the bread. They stayed for her laugh. Lila ran the garden like a general. The land long neglected bloomed under her fingers. Tomatoes, onions, beans, even corn. People started bringing seeds, stories, then hands to help. Holt Ranch wasn't just a sanctuary anymore. It was becoming a center, a pulse in the wide chest of the West. Late one evening, Caleb Turner returned. He came without fanfare, tipping his hat as he stepped off his horse. Elias met him halfway up the drive. "Place looks different," Caleb said. "So do I," Elias replied. They shared coffee beneath the oak tree near the barn. "Silas is done," Caleb said. "What's left of his holdings got sold off." Reed turned in his badge, headed east. "Don't think he'll be back." Elias nodded. "Not much left to fear, then." Caleb sipped. "'Cept ghosts. But I reckon you've made peace with yours." They sat quiet a while, the kind of silence that didn't weigh heavy. Before leaving, Caleb looked back at the house, at the children laughing on the porch. "You ever think about what's next?" Elias smiled. "I used to run from the future. Now I just wake up and help build it." One night, Abigail stood in the doorway watching him mend a saddle. "Place runs smoother with you around," she said. He looked up, brow raised. "I thought you were running it." "I'm running parts of it," she said, stepping into the room. "But there's pieces that only work because you're here." He set the saddle down. "I didn't know I had any of those left." "You do." She reached out and took his hand, rough from leather and wood. He let her. No promises, no grand words, just the quiet understanding that a house could be rebuilt. So could a man. That winter, when the first snow fell soft on the fields, Elias Holt sat by the fire with a girl curled up against his side, Rose's old wooden horse clutched in her hand. He didn't think about what he'd lost. He thought about what had found him. And for the first time in a very long time, he hoped spring would come quickly. Spring came early that year. Soft rains swept across the prairie, soaking the earth and coaxing green from brown. Crocuses poked through thawing ground. The trees behind Holt Ranch bloomed with shy blossoms. And the air smelled not of gunpowder or dust, but of new things taking root. Elias Holt woke with the sun, same as he always had, but something felt different. The silence that used to greet him had been replaced by life. Distant chatter from the kitchen. The sound of children arguing playfully over boots. A clatter of pans. It wasn't noise. It was music. Outside, he found Lila in the garden, coaxing early sprouts from cold soil. Hannah stood behind the clothesline, hands on hips, arguing with Jacob about where to hang the heavier shirts. Abigail leaned over a notebook at the table beneath the porch, working out supplies for the schoolhouse. 15 years ago, this place had been a tomb. Now it was a living, breathing thing. "Morning," Abigail said, not looking up. "Morning," he replied, stepping down the porch. She lifted her eyes then and smiled. "You heading to town today?" He nodded. "Figured I'd drop off the last batch of fence nails to Turner. Maybe see if they need help finishing the church roof." "You're becoming dependable, Mr. Holt," she teased. "Don't spread that around." He grunted but couldn't hide the smirk. She reached out and brushed a bit of hay from his shoulder. "It suits you." He looked past her to the children now racing down the hill behind the barn, their voices carried by the wind. "They deserve all this." "More, really. They'll have it," she said, "because we're giving it to them." He stood a moment longer, watching the sunrise stretch across the fields like a warm hand. Then he mounted his horse and headed down the trail toward town. In town, things were changing too. The old saloon had cleaned its windows. The general store stocked more books than bullets. The preacher now held Sunday gatherings beneath the oak tree while the schoolhouse expanded one room at a time. People smiled when they saw him ride in, not out of politeness, out of gratitude. At Turner's Ranch, he helped hoist the final beam into place above the chapel door. Later, over coffee, Caleb handed him a package wrapped in brown paper. "What's this?" Elias asked. "Call it a thank you," Caleb replied. Inside was a hand-carved plaque, letters burned clean into the wood. Holt Ranch, a place to begin again. Elias held it a long moment, saying nothing, but his throat tightened. That night, after dinner and stories by lamplight, Abigail found him alone by the fire. He was turning the plaque over in his hands. She knelt beside him. "Thinking about putting it up tomorrow," he said. "I think it's already true," she replied. He looked at her, really looked. For the first time, he didn't see the fear or the weariness that had once clung to her like shadow. He saw strength, pride, home. "Do you think," he asked slowly, "a place like this could last?" Abigail rested her hand over his. "Not if it's perfect, but if we keep building it, keep choosing it every damn day, then yes, I do." Outside, the wind shifted again, bringing with it the first warm scent of the season. He didn't say anything more. He didn't need to. Tomorrow there'd be fences to fix, lessons to teach, bread to bake, tears to soothe, laughs to share, children to raise. And no one would come riding with chains or contracts or fear, because they had chosen to stay. And Elias Holt, a man once hollowed by loss, had chosen to live. Not in the past, but in every sunrise that followed. The story of Holt Ranch teaches us profound life values, resilience, compassion, and the courage to stand against injustice. Elias Holt's transformation from a solitary, grief-stricken man to a protector of the vulnerable highlights the power of human connection to heal old wounds. Abigail, Hannah, and Lila's bravery in the face of oppression underscores the importance of dignity and solidarity, showing that even in desperation, hope can spark change. The tale reminds us that justice often begins with one person's choice to act, inspiring others to build a better future together. It's a call to embrace empathy, confront wrongs, and create safe spaces for those in need. These values resonate deeply, urging us to reflect on our own actions. Like, share, subscribe, and comment below to join the conversation about how this story inspires you to make a difference